So that looks pretty good. I'll get as close as I can there so we can hear have good audio on it. Get that out of the way.
Those fellows over here before, they sit right in front of me, and I said, this couch is more comfortable. The reason
that's where I'm going to sit. I'm going to sit right here beside you.
Okay.
And
there was two of them over there and one here. What?
And they were with the
American
Legion out here. Post.
Well, there's three of them together.
Keep this with your stuff. This says that you're on tape number 44. Okay, and this tape will be on the shelf at the Portsmouth Public Library. Okay, so 100 years from now, your great-great-greats can go down there and look at you and listen to you.
Well,
see what you sound like.
I get a copy of this. I did at the Legion.
Did you?
Yeah, we made two of each one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so
okay.
Give all the members a copy of the.
I'll get you a copy made.
Okay.
I'll get you a copy made.
Appreciate it.
Now you told me your name, James Melvin Estepp.
Right.
And when were you born?
October 3rd, 1924.
1924. And you were born in Canada. Canada, Kentucky.
Right, across the river from Williamson, West Virginia.
All right, very good. And I believe that, where would that be? In Pike County?
Pike County.
Down in Kentucky.
Pike County, Kentucky.
Let's get a little timeline here. What was your father's name?
Millard, M-I-L-L-A-R-D, Millard Fillmore Estepp.
Millard Fillmore?
Fillmore.
Like the president.
Right.
Millard. Okay.
So he was named after.
No kidding. He was named after Millard Fillmore. Okay. There probably weren't too many people named after Millard Fillmore.
Not too many. I haven't run into anymore.
What was your mother's name?
Pricey Blackburn.
Pricey?
P-R-I-C-Y Blackburn.
Blackburn. Her maiden name was Blackburn.
Right.
Yep. Now, what were your father's parents' name?
They died before I can remember them, but I think one of them was named Emma and the other was named Joseph.
Okay, you don't remember their...
I really don't.
Okay.
And,
how about your mother's parents' names?
I can't recall either one of their names.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one sister, and she's deceased now. Been dead a couple of years.
What was her name?
Margaret.
Okay.
Margie.
Now, are you married?
Very much so. 58 years.
58 years
in November.
Holy cow. 58 years, and what is your wife's name?
Mary Jean.
Mary Jean. What was her maiden name?
Downing.
Downing.
Number 10 Downing Street.
That's right, yeah. And was she born in Canada too?
No, she's born in Williamson, West Virginia.
Williamson, West Virginia,
yeah.
Okay. Now let's go in the other direction. Do you have any children?
I have two daughters.
What's your oldest daughter's name?
Brenda Gifford.
And where is she living?
She's living here with us at the present time.
She lives in the house here?
Yeah, she works down at Disco.
Oh, does she? Okay. Brenda Gifford. I may have seen her down there. Is she in the main office down there? Or?
Yeah, she's in the main office. Worked there on the teller line for about 10 years, and now she's finally got upstairs.
All right. And does she have children?
One daughter that lives in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, so she must be married.
Yeah. Yes, her name's Davis.
What's her first name?
Angela.
Angela Davis.
That's a very popular name.
Yes. Now, and she has children.
One child.
So you are a great
Right.
grandpa. Are you great-great?
Yeah, I have 6 great and 6 great.
You have 6?
No,
let's see.
I had that in the paper wrong. My wife said I had to be as old as my dad. I had great.
Okay.
They would be great, wouldn't they?
Well, the children of your great-grandchildren would be great-greats. Do your great-grandchildren have children?
I've got 6 great ones and 5 great ones.
And 1 great-great?
5.
5 great-greats.
Yeah.
We'll get it right here. You didn't know there'd be a test, did you?
That's in the paper, and she still says I was wrong on that.
Who said that?
My wife.
She says you're wrong.
Says, yeah, that'd make me too old. Just 1 great.
Yeah.
But my children's children would be great,
Mm-hmm.
and their children would be great. So I've got 6 great, and 5 great.
Now, your other daughter, that'd be your youngest daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's her name?
Denise Monroe. She lives in Westerville.
Westerville, Ohio.
And 5 of those children belong to her.
5 children.
Yeah.
Okay.
3 boys and 2 girls.
Okay. All right, then, let me ask you this, then. How much education do you have? How far did you get in school?
I completed the 11th grade. I went into service between my junior and senior year.
Did you? How old were you when you went into service?
18.
Okay.
A whole basketball, football, and baseball team.
The whole team went in?
Practically, there was 8 of us went in together.
What was the name of that little school that you went to?
Chatteroy. Chattarroy.
Chatteroy.
It's 5 mile west of Williamson, West Virginia.
Chatteroy High School?
Yeah.
Is
No
this,
longer exists.
I was going to ask you if it still exists, but probably.
Even the school's torn down now. The only thing's left is a gymnasium that WPA built, and I got to play in it the first year it was completed.
Really?
Right.
You played basketball in there?
Right.
So now you're retired. What are you retired from?
Rural mail carrier.
How long were you a mail carrier?
20 years.
20 years?
20 years. I was in the insurance business 15 before that.
Mm-hmm.
And ran a dry cleaning plant 5 years before that. So
Okay. How long have you lived in Scioto County?
50 years.
50?
Yeah.
So why did you relocate? How did you end up here is what I'm trying to say.
I was hired with the insurance company in Pikeville, Kentucky, and they said I could go to practically where I wanted to go, and because of the airplane, I thought maybe I would come here and get a job. I didn't dream about being stuck in that insurance business 15 years, but I
Didn't you like it? Did you like it? Didn't like it?
Well, I made some wonderful friends, but and we survived, but that's about it. It's a hard way to make a living.
Okay. Now, when did you join the service? You joined the Army, didn't you?
Well, I was drafted. That was just after they passed the draft age 18, and since I hadn't completed my senior year in school, they gave me a preference of finishing school or going in. Me and all the other athletes.
The whole basketball team.
Incidentally, that finished the football there. They didn't have football anymore after that.
After you guys left, no more football either.
And 8 of us went to the same place for basic training.
Where was that? Where
Fort McClellan, Alabama.
Fort McClellan, Alabama is where you did your basic.
Yeah, we trained in the Talladega National Forest, where they have all the racing now.
Now, do you remember the day you joined?
It was August 12th, I think. No, July, and we left on August 12th to go to basic training.
1940 what?
43.
43 is when you joined.
Right.
Where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
It just came out of a movie theater. Into a movie in Williamson. And,
what was the name of the movie?
Something about the Yukon.
Who were the stars in it?
I can see him, but I don't remember his name.
Did you have your girlfriend with you?
No, I was by myself for a change. And,
usually you took your girlfriend.
Just came came out of the theater, and they had all these extra papers. I didn't know what was going on, and I got a paper, and it's Pearl Harbor, and where's this? That belonged to us, or didn't have any idea where it was.
You must have been about 16 then.
Yes, 16.
That's you coming out of the theater and learn about Pearl Harbor. Then what did you do? Go home?
Yeah, I went home, and of course everybody was crying, excited, and wondering, what the next day would bring, And finally, President Roosevelt at the time came on the air. And
did you hear his speech?
yes. I think, of course, that's back before television, but everybody was gathered around the radio.
Yeah. That would have been you, your mother, your father, and your sister.
Right.
Was anybody else there? Neighbors or anything?
I don't think so. I think we were the only ones at home at that time.
Well, what did your father have? What did he do for a living? Your father?
He was a coal miner.
He was.
He and all his brothers. That's all he ever did was coal mine.
Now, was he in the First World War? You said. Okay. Did he go to Europe?
Yes, he was. He was in the Argonne Forest.
Oh, was he?
And, he got gassed in the First World War.
Was he in the Army or the Marines? Army. Okay. Well, what did he think about Pearl Harbor?
Well, he didn't have much education either, and he didn't know where it was, but he knew I would probably be in it, so he was very tense and emotional, like most people were then.
He'd been through it.
Yes, right. And he'd been through the coal mines, and that's all he ever said. He didn't want me to ever go in the coal mines. So.
Well, after you left, and this would have been, you joined up in, say, June or July, the 12th?
Well, it was July, and left home, and they gave us 2 weeks.
Okay.
And we left home, I think it was on the 12th of August.
That's
43.
That's when you went in. When were you discharged from the Army?
December 1945.
What was your rank when you were discharged?
EFC.
How long was basic training at Fort McClellan?
13 weeks.
13 weeks.
I had 13 weeks. 5 months from the day I left home, I was in combat in Italy.
5 months. Did you go to North Africa too?
Yeah. And the war, they had driven Rommel out of Africa, and we were just there a few days. And we went on into Italy. It's the first American division to invade Italy, or to invade Europe.
You were. Now that was
36th Division.
I was going to say that was the 36th Infantry Division, wasn't it?
36th Texas Division.
Now, after your basic, though, that 13 weeks, where did you go then from Fort McClellan?
I had a 7-day delay en route from there into Washington, D.C. And
were you able to come home?
Well, I was home about 4 days between Fort McClellan and D.C. They called it a delay en route, and then we went to Newport News, Virginia, the next day after we got to D.C. and next day, then we went to board the ship.
Remember the name of the ship?
A.E. Anderson. Troop ship.
Anderson. A.E. Anderson. Okay. So how long did it take you to get across the Atlantic?
As well as I remember, it was about 12 days, 12 days.
Well, was it a calm voyage, or did you have storms?
Just single. There was no convoy.
No convoy.
No.
Okay. Were there storms, or was the sea calm?
It was calm going over in the Atlantic, but then after we got in the Mediterranean, we ran into a storm and lost about everything on board, washed off.
Did you? Okay.
Well, I'm getting a little ahead in the story. This is when we went from Italy to France. That's when we were on the Mediterranean, which was several months later. We went into the invasion of southern France on the 15th of August, and that was in '44.
Now, but you went to Africa first, North Africa. You remember when you unloaded there in North Africa?
It was shortly, would have been the first week or two in January.
Okay. That'd been in '44?
'44, right.
What'd you think of Africa?
They can have it. Those people, they'd steal you blind, you looking at them.
Well, it was, so how long were you in Africa then?
Oh, just a couple of days is all.
What was your, what were you trained to do? What was your job in the Army? You were in the infantry, but...
In the infantry as a rifleman, and trained on small mortars, machine guns, throwing hand grenades, hand-to-hand fighting, bayonet training, and as soon as I joined the 36th, they won the marksmanship in the rifle range and so on, and this old sergeant said, well, I've got me a Kentucky squirrel hunter. So I had the honor of being the first scout.
You were a scout?
I was a scout.
What does a scout do?
Well, he's more or less cannon fodder. You go out ahead of the rest of them to scout it, see what's maybe laying in ambush, waiting on you. And
try and find the enemy.
Right. And usually you go until you find him or he sees you first, and as far as it's you, which happened several times.
Now, you were in Africa a couple of days.
Just a couple of days, yeah.
Where did you go after that?
Naples, Italy.
Did you have to invade Naples, or was that already under Allied?
This was already, our division invaded, 36 I was assigned to, invaded Italy on the 9th of September.
Of 1940?
That would have been in '43, and then this was in January of '44.
Okay.
They'd been in there almost 4 months, and I joined them at Casino.
Okay.
In Italy.
Okay. Casino was where that monastery
was bombed. Yes, I was within half a mile of that on one of those mountains. I saw them when they bombed that.
Did you? You were actually there to see them bomb that monastery.
Right.
Did you after they bombed it? Did you go up into the monastery? I mean, or
we tried it several times. 36 had tried it, failed, lost several hundred men. 34th, 45th, and the 3rd. There was 4 infantry divisions made up the 5th Army. All of them had a chance, and several Allied countries. And after the monastery then was finally bombed and leveled, then they give that to the Polish. They were the ones that finally took the monastery. And I talked to a Polish man at the War Memorial last week, and he had an uncle that was there. And I said, there was a bunch of brave men, and he said they were a bunch of stupid men because they volunteered for that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they lost. They've got a cemetery there. That's I forget how many thousand men they lost. But the Germans, it really helped them because they weren't using that monastery as observation. But after they bombed it, they used all the rubble. They come in then, and they had tunnels, and the bombs, all it done was rattle their teeth a little bit. They were as far underground, didn't hurt it. And then it just made better cover and observation for them after it was bombed.
Was that your first combat at Casino?
Yes.
Okay, that's the first time.
I'd been this was in February when it was bombed, and I had 2 or 3 weeks of combat before it was bombed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And,
pretty cold and muddy at that time of year?
Cold, muddy, yeah. The mountains, it was part of the Alps mountains, and very seldom the nights would get above freezing most of the time. And no vehicles, you couldn't get any vehicles, no armor or anything, and at the night, and you couldn't show your head there in the daytime because the Germans were always looking down on you. So everything was done by the Allied forces that were done after dark. And,
did you have to go out at dark as a scout?
Have to go out either about every night as soon as it started getting dark. You got an assignment to go out on a patrol, or you took the dead and wounded to the bottom of the mountain and brought rations and ammunition back up. And that was about a 12-hour round trip as hard as you could go. And the time you got to the top, then carrying that, you were, even though it may be zero, you'd be freezing to death or burning up because of all that load. And 15 minutes after you got there, then your clothes would be frozen.
Did you have enough to eat?
All we had was C and K rations, and what you had of those is just what you wanted to carry, and you traveled as light as you could. I've gone 6 weeks at a time and never had my boots on.
6 weeks? What would that do to you? I mean,
your feet would freeze, and toes would tingle. A lot of them, we lost about as many men in those mountains there with trench feet, frozen feet, as we did with the enemy.
Yeah.
And these trails at night, they were marked by the German artillery, and they'd shell them all night long. Even though they couldn't see you, they knew we were using them to get up and down and get our supplies. But even that wasn't as dangerous as going out on patrol. Sometimes you'd have a combat patrol. You'd go out to get as many of them as you could, and the other times you called a recon patrol. They just go out and try to capture a prisoner or two to bring back for interrogation.
Were you ever successful in capturing a prisoner?
Oh, yeah.
Well, how do you do that? I mean, you gotta get pretty close.
You're not kidding. You have to be quieter than they are, and you have to have somebody that's as dead tired as we were and falling asleep. Or,
somebody falling asleep at their post and that sort of thing.
And that happened quite often. You could never go sound asleep, and hard enough to get warm enough till you could go to sleep, because that was back before sleeping bags. We had nothing, only what we carried. All I carried was a raincoat.
Raincoat.
Yeah.
And that's what you put over when you laid down.
That's all I had. During the winter, see, we didn't advance. We stayed in the same foxhole all winter long, except when we were out at night, because the line didn't advance a yard. I mean, you may take 10 or 12 yards today and lose 15 the next day. But we were practically in the same. And you couldn't even dig a foxhole in those mountains. It was all just rocks and boulders. You just piled them up around you. And,
how close were the lines?
Probably someplace 100 yards, someplace maybe 1,000 yards. And they were continually shooting flares up, trying to catch patrols out. And those flares would hang up over you and light up like daylight, and then they'd open up on you.
Did you ever get caught out in the open?
Oh yeah, lots of time.
Is that when you hit the ground?
Yeah, tried to get under it.
Try to get it under the ground.
Pull it up over you.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and that helmet, you tried to get in it. You hated that thing until you got under artillery or something, and then you tried to get in it.
Mm-hmm. The lines being that close, sometimes within 100 yards, could you see the enemy over there? Could you hear them? Did you yell back and forth or anything?
You could hear them, and sometimes, but not very often unless something happened, because you didn't want to give your position away, because as soon as you heard a noise, everybody opened up on the direction the noise came from.
What weapon did you have?
M1 rifle.
M1 rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you carried hand grenades?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I always tried to carry 4 or 5 hand grenades, and getting ahead of my story, but when I was wounded in October then in France, I had 4 hand grenades pinned on my front of my field jacket and cartridge belt, and I got a whole machine gun burst went between my arms, and didn't hit one of those hand grenades.
That's pretty good.
And in that story, if you read
right
in the paper there, that's of course they pulled us off the casino. That was when the May offensive started. They pulled us off the casino front along 1st of May, and we went back all the way to Salerno, where they'd gone in the 9th of September before, and started loading on. This was a convoy, and then they went around into Anzio, and that's then on the 30th of May. We were on Anzio, and one day or evening they said that they pulled up a bunch of trucks and said we were going on a secret mission, and they loaded the whole regiment on, well, there was 2 regiments really, on these big army trucks, 2.5 ton, whatever they were. We went all the way out around Anzio and unloaded, and they came around, the officers came around and told us to fix bayonets and take the cartridge out of the chamber of the rifle. We were going on a secret mission, we were going to infiltrate the lines that night after dark, and they didn't want a shot fired. And before we got started, we got orders to load back up on the trucks, and we went all the way back to where we left from that evening.
So that was the end of the secret mission?
No, we done the same thing again next evening.
Okay.
Only this time
you did go in.
We did go in, and
with bayonets only.
Bayonets and hand grenades. And, they didn't want a shot fired. They even checked the rifle, make sure they didn't have one in the chamber of the rifle.
What did you attack? I mean, the Germans were there, but
they were fighting. They were fighting at Casino and Velletria and Anzio, and the attack was coordinated at Casino and Anzio at the same time. We had one regiment fighting in a town here on each side of us, and reconnaissance or intelligence said there was a small gap that we could get through single file, they thought. And that's the first time that I ever heard of intelligence being right.
Yeah. Was it right?
It was right. They wasn't shot fired, and it took us all night, but next morning at daylight, when it broke day, we were on top of that mountain. And the rest of our division was still fighting in these towns on each side where we went through that night.
Okay.
And of course, when they found out the next morning that we were there, then we really caught it, because
from the Germans.
Yeah. Right. That's when they counterattacked, and if you read the story, that's where my buddy was killed in the hole with me on the top of that mountain. And that was on Memorial Day. Back then they called it Decoration Day, but it was on May the 31st in 1944.
Okay. What was his name?
Art Kuhl, Kuhl. He was from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Fort Wayne. Did you ever meet his people?
No, but I have a letter there now, still have, from his widow.
I see.
My aunt, my dad's sister, after the war was over, she was questioning me and all about different things, you know, and told her about that, and she got in touch with the Red Cross and got her name and address and wrote her a letter, and then this is her answer back to her, and she gave the letter to me after.
How long ago was that?
I was reading, the war wasn't over yet. That was in 45.
Oh, really? Okay.
Postmarked in 1945.
Okay. But after you got on top of this mountain, you were in a position here where you could see the fighting.
Yeah.
And then the Germans came up.
We could hear all of it. And when it broke day the next morning, we could see in front of us, and here was all this German rear echelon.
Mm-hmm.
They had no idea, you know, that we were that close to them. And a couple of guys with these water-cooled 30 caliber machine guns decided they'd have some fun at them. It was at least a mile the way the crow fly. You can just make out that, well, without binoculars, that they were Germans, you know, and all this tanks and equipment and so on and so forth. And you could tell it was rear echelon staging area where they supplied their troops in front of them. But these guys loaded these machine guns with tracer ammunition. And they started firing, and you could see those tracers ricocheting off the buildings and tanks and everything. In 2 minutes, you couldn't see a person move there. Nothing moved. But about an hour after that,
they organized an attack on you?
Yeah, they were all around us on that mountain before we knew. We knew they would probably hit us, but not that soon. And we had orders to dig in, and one man tried to get a little rest because we didn't get any sleep or rest the night before. And one man stay alert and stay awake. But most of the men, the GIs had to have their coffee. They fell back over the hill a little ways and was brewing coffee, the biggest part of them, when they hit us. And they even crawled up and some of the GI holes where one of the men was going to make coffee and the other was laying there sitting in the hole asleep. And the Germans got up in the hole and sat there with this burp gun on them until 10 o'clock. That was their jump-off time, was 10 o'clock. And when they did, they were all over us, all around us. And
were they?
come to find out after the thing was over, we didn't know how they were getting up there that fast. And they had a tunnel all the way from back where we fired on them, or they fired on those machine guns earlier in the morning, all the way back to the top of that mountain. And
did you find the tunnel?
yeah, after it was all over, after we'd driven them off, and but we didn't know how they were getting up there that fast, and without somebody seeing them, you know. And there was no shell of a building on my right, and my buddy and I were on the tip top because we were the first ones on top of the mountain. And the rest of them was behind us, so they told us to dig in right where we were, you know. And we were right on top of it, and there's a little elevation there, maybe 5, not over 10 foot, and there was about a quarter of a wall of an old building. It must have been built back in Nero's time because, anyway, this German, every once in a while, I was down here and we had a cliff right under us, and we were throwing these grenades down over right under us. We could hear them. That was their where they were coming out of that tunnel, apparently, because we could hear it sound like 30 or 40 of them there and giving orders and so on. And every once in a while I get a glimpse of something on the peeping around this corner of this building. He was up higher to my right, and it was Jerry. Every once in a while he'd sling one of those potato mashers down. We were the only ones he could see, but he knew the rest of them were close. German hand grenades, and he'd reach that burp gum around and wouldn't even show himself, just have his arm out with that machine gun to fire. And it was my job. I told Hart, I said, you watch on the left and I'll watch on the right, and that's what we were doing. We were on our knees in this foxhole, and his right shoulder was against my right, or my left. Mm-hmm. And they were coming out on both sides under us, but when we throw these hand grenades over there, we can hear them hollering and screaming and cussing and making all kind of noise, you know.
You mean that you were hitting them?
Yeah.
They were getting hit with a shrapnel from the hand?
Okay. And, it was, I don't know, probably 15, 20 foot right under us. So we'd pull a pin on these grenades and hold them a few seconds and then drop them. That way they were exploding before they hit the ground. So the shrapnel, that's the dangerous part about it. I mean, we got caught in a lot of artillery, they call them tree bursts. They'd hit the trees and all this shrapnel just come straight down on you. And we were, no telling how many we were getting with those hand grenades, but we ran out of hand grenades. And I had 4, and I guess he had 3 or 4 or 5. But we sure would have wished we'd had more after we ran out. All we had then was a rifle, you know.
What did you do then? You ran out of hand grenades.
Yeah.
What did you do?
We just put the rifle up and down with a hole there and fire a clip and back up and reload.
Could you see them even
though
you
were... see them, no.
Okay.
Couldn't see them, but they were making so much noise. They was crying, moaning, screaming, cussing. Hans, Fritz.
Calling names.
Yeah. Shouting orders, you know, and every once in a while one would stick, I see that helmet come out like a turtle, and I'd drive him back, and I don't guess they ever got him. They got his helmet, you know, where they got him, but about every 2 or 3 minutes here to come that thing around again, and then finally, and this has haunted me for 60 years. I really, we were talking about Art and I before. The bullets were getting so close to our head, they were popping in our ears when they broke the sound barrier. And they cracked like a bullwhip. I mean, when they get close enough to burn you, they're close. And well, I said, Art, I don't see, since there's a cliff under us, how they're getting that close to our head, you know, unless they're in a tower or a tree or something on the level with us. And but after this battle was over, and we started back over, they said we'd been relieved by Rangers, and we were going to another assignment. And anyway, I got up and left the hole, and of course Art was dead and buried there in the hole. And I go down, back of me about 30, 40 feet, and then there's a little elevation of 8 or 10 foot, and I go down that, and there's a cave here. And I hear GIs in this cave. There's 5 or 6 GIs in there. Dark, you couldn't see in it. But I could hear them talking. And I stopped at the mouth of that cave, and a voice inside says, "Where's your buddy?" And I said, "He's dead and buried right over your head." And I was pretty mad, really, because if those guys had been out there doing their job, my buddy might still be alive.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I think about it after all these years, and I know there was one fire in there after Art was killed, because I could see his helmet. All you could see is the top. You couldn't tell whether it was our man or a German.
Mm-hmm.
But I know he was firing at me after Art was killed, and I opened up, shot a whole clip at that helmet, and I never did see it anymore. I kept glancing back there and on the building,
Mm-hmm.
and both until they hollered and blew a whistle or something, said that for us to fall back over the hill, that Rangers were relieving us. We was going on another assignment.
Mm-hmm.
But just in the last 3 or 4 years, I can't help but believe that one of our own men in that tunnel or in that cave came out there, and he probably thought we were Germans and fired at us behind us. And instead of hitting hard in front, they hit him behind.
Is that where the bullet came from? Behind?
Until the last few years, I thought it came from the front. But now, in the last 2 or 3 years, I just about come to the conclusion that it came from behind.
Mm.
And he didn't know what hit him. He
died instantly.
He died. He didn't make a sound. He didn't murmur. He didn't knock his helmet off. He still had his elbows up on the edge of that hole. And that's something I wondered, all these years, if it hit him from the front, I think it would have kind of knocked him backward.
Mm-hmm.
But since it hit him from the front or behind, I think, and he never did move, I can't help but believe that he was hit from behind.
Probably one of those guys thought it was a German.
Yeah, I'm sure, because that's all I could see when I fired that clip at him was I thought it was a German. But after I got back, after it was over, and seen that was right at the mouth of that cave, I'm afraid it was a GI.
Mm-hmm.
They killed him.
Mm-hmm. When you say he was buried, I mean, did
well, they called in for artillery. Anytime you get in an attack that way or a counterattack where you're trying to hold position, they've always got a artillery observer close to you. They're supposed to be right up there with you. And they've got the maps and phones and everything, and they call the coordinates back. And what they were trying to do is drop this artillery rounds right over the edge of our hole. And 9 out of 10 times, anybody I ever knew in the artillery always kidded them, called them short round, because the rounds were never over you. The first 2 or 3 was always right on you or behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, after Art was hit, and I knew he was hit, I put my rifle down and tried to get him down in the hole out of the line of fire. And I thought maybe he might have been lucky enough to the dirt that we piled up on the edge of the hole. Maybe the round went through that dirt and hit him in the shoulder. And might be able to do something for him. But when I started to lift him down in the hole, everything in the man's head came out in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
All the brain surgeons in the world couldn't help him. But anyway, this artillery, the first 3 rounds, hit not over 25 or 30 yards behind us, and all this mountains of dirt that this shell made comes right in on you see. And
is that what covered him up?
I put my raincoat over him, and he was completely buried when I left him in that hole.
Was his body ever recovered?
They reported him as MIA. His wife said in that letter, and but I stuck his rifle up and in the hole when I left the hole, and I'm sure the grave registration they had in the paper that I report him to the grave registration, and I never seen the grave registration. They always come in 2 or 3 days behind you after the battle was over. But I stuck his rifle up there, and I reported it to the company commander, which I'm sure is one of the ones that was in that cave. And anyway, that night we were digging in this other mountain we were on, and this right at the edge of dark. I couldn't tell him. I was by myself then. I didn't have anybody to dig in with. We were digging the foxholes to protect that mountain for the night. And this lieutenant come by and he said, wanted to know my name and serial number and my buddy's name. And I gave them to him, and he said, I'm going to turn you and your friend in from Silver Star. He said there was several dead and wounded Germans in front of your position after that counterattack was over. And Art's wife received his posthumously. So, but when he said that, I said, were you one of the men that was in that cave? And he said, yes, he was. I said, well, you can take that Silver Star and stick it. And I said, if you have it on you, I said, I'll do it for you. So that's probably where mine ended up.
Right.
But anyway, through all the years of checking and so on, and then finally now I've got my company commander's name and address, but I can't get any answer. I don't know where he's dead. Some of his family's receiving the correspondence, but they're not answering it for some reason. Yeah. And but I went to a reunion in Sweetwater, Texas. The whole company that I was in was from Sweetwater, Texas, originally.
And you were a Buckeye with a bunch of Texans.
Yeah, yeah. And of course there was as many Buckeyes then as there was Texans. The biggest part of them were lost at Salerno in the invasion in September. But there was 8 of us that left together, and
left Kentucky.
Left Williamson and went to Ashland or Huntington. I can't even remember now where it was, Ashland or Huntington, where we went for examination. And we left there and went to Fort Thomas, Kentucky, and 7 of us went to Fort McClellan, Alabama. And we all went overseas together, and there was even 4 of us assigned to that division. And the first letter I got from home then in Italy, after I got over there, was one of them had already been killed, and one of them was wounded and back home already. And out of the 8 of us, one of them went to Panama Canal. He was there the whole war. The other 7 were sent to his rifle, in the rifle companies in the infantry. And 4 was killed and 3 was wounded. And but when you went in the infantry during the wartime in the rifle company, there's only 3 things that will happen, and neither one of them are very pleasant to look forward to. You're going to die, or you're going to be wounded, or you're going to be captured. That's all you had to look forward to. There was 837 men went through the company I was in.
Went through that company.
Yeah.
And the company is about actually 180.
180 men.
So you're talking about men would get killed and wounded, or
replacements
replaced
continually. I had 5 or 6 different second scouts. And after Art, I never did even learn one of their names. Never. Some of them didn't last 2 hours. Some of them maybe last a week or 2. But I had several different squad leaders, and I had several different platoon leaders. They just turned over so fast that that's the reason I never did recognize this man, lieutenant. I don't know where he came from, don't know who he was. Never did see or hear of him anymore after he came around that night. I don't know.
You mean after you told him to stick it, you never saw him again?
Never did see him again, and never did find anybody that knew who he was. So I don't know. He may have joined the company that day or that morning. I have no idea, but never did see him again after that, and don't know as I ever did see him before that. So that's how fast they went.
That night then, were you counterattacked again?
No, that night we had broken through, and they had broken through at the casino also. So the big May offensive has started in, and we Anzio was only about 30, 40 miles south of Rome. So we were on the move then, and they declared Rome an open city, and we captured Rome then on June the 5th.
There was no fighting there, was there, in Rome? Or?
Always, well, not in Rome, but there was quite a bit of rear echelon. They would set up machine guns, artillery pieces to slow you up while they could retreat the main army and set up defensive areas like they had at casino so long. But you tried to stay on them as fast, and that's when it was so exhausting. I mean, you go miles and miles and miles a day and night. I've actually gone sleepwalking, but maybe go 36 hours and maybe sleep an hour and a half or 2 hours all that time. And by then it was getting hot, and during the Second World War in combat you didn't wear fatigue, you wore ODs. We had those ODs on. We'd sweat until the perspiration would turn those OD uniforms white from the salt, you know. And it was hard. It was all hard, rough going. I mean,
when you got to Rome, did you get to Rome? Did you get into Rome?
As far as I know, I was one of the first GIs to enter Rome.
Were you?
We started in the night before, and they had left a few machine guns circling Rome, the outskirts of Rome, try to hold us up as much as they could. And by then we were in the ground as flat as this floor. And we ran into this barbed wire. It was about getting along about dusk in the evening time. And we thought we were just going to go march right on into Rome, you know, since we had them going. And we hit this barbed wire, and we cut through it. We got about half of the company, my company I was in at that time. We could see all the buildings in the city. We were then within half a mile, the outskirts. And we hadn't much more than got through this barbed wire, and they led about half the company through it, and then they opened up on it, and they had us like sitting ducks out in that flat ground. And men jumped up and started trying to run, get away from it, get back away out of that flat ground. Got caught in that barbed wire, and a lot of them got riddled in that wire. And that night you could hear them all night after dark, hollering, still hung up in that wire, wounded, and couldn't get out of it. And, hear them crying and screaming going on, but I was already through it.
When you were through it and they opened up, what'd you do, hit the ground?
Well, yeah, as flat as I could.
And stayed there.
And well, you didn't know what to do, because you get up and start running, you knew you had to get back through that barbed wire, and you had trouble enough. The way they string that stuff, I never did know it until I cut through it then, and of course I was in front, and I had to carry a pair of wire cutters, and I never did use them before, didn't know, what they were for, really. But the old squad leader way back behind me. He said, cut through the wire. So, and I cut through it, and when you cut through the one strand of it, you're kind of in a box, a little cage in there. So you got to go cut through another strand, and you're in another box. Mm-hmm. You have to go through that 4 or 5 times before you can get all the way through it. Mm-hmm. And of course, we got about half the company through it when they opened up on us, and it was already after dark, and I could see this one machine gun right in front of us, and while he was firing, this fire flew out from it, and I knew, where he was. So I opened up 2 or 3 clips I fired at that.
Oh, with your M1?
With the M1, mm-hmm. And of course I was flat on the ground, and of course he was too. It was level. And anyway, there were several of them around, and this one was directly in front of me, and I never did see any more fire from it. So I either got him or they got up and retreated. But anyway, when daylight come, they were gone.
The Germans were?
They completely deserted, and mm-hmm. we just walked on in.
That whole idea was to slow you down.
Yeah, just slow us down for the night, or as many hours as possible, But then, that morning early, on June the 5th, and like I say, I was a scout, and I know there was no GI in front of me, but I'm sure all around there were several thousand men that went in all in the outskirts of Rome. Mm-hmm. But where I was the first GI on in front of me. Mm-hmm. And that was a really happy time because they told us all the way, they told the men all the way from Salerno, as soon as you capture Rome, the war will be over. If you make it, the war will be over for you, and you go back to the States to train troops for combat. Mm-hmm. So we were really happy. We began to think then of maybe we wouldn't live to see the end of the war. But as soon as we got through all the celebration and all, they loaded us on trucks, tanks, and half-tracks, and we took off after the Germans. Mm-hmm. And we chased them until the 28th of June. This was on June the 5th. And incidentally, the next day was D-Day at Normandy. Mm-hmm. So finally, there was other American troops in Europe. Mm-hmm. And when that happened, we captured Rome, and then we found out about Normandy. We thought, man, we may make it yet. So we chased them for 4 weeks almost after that, 280 miles north of Rome. Mm-hmm. Of course, we'd hit all these roadblocks and different barriers slow us up.
Is that somebody coming in?
That's probably my daughter.
Okay.
Coming in from work. All
right.
We'd hit them. Some of them may tie you up for an hour or two, and some of them maybe 2 or 3 days at a time. According to how much resistance you ran into and what kind of German troops it was. You could tell in 10 minutes if it was SS troops. They were elite. They didn't retreat. And,
they were pretty rough then.
They were tough, rough characters. Yes, they were well trained and fanatical. And hard combination to be.
Let me ask you here, when you get into Rome, what was that? How long were you in Rome before they took you north?
We were going all the time.
Oh, okay.
We never did stop. We were going.
You didn't stop there to refit, or
didn't stop. The mob of the Italian people had mobbed us, so we couldn't get through.
So they were celebrating.
They were celebrating. They were jubilant because they'd been occupied for years. And wine and flowers, and they were wonderful. And you can imagine being liberated after all that time.
Did you see any part of Rome, or did you just go right through it, like the Colosseum or things like that?
We saw it on the move. That's all. And on the 28th then of June, they relieved us. We thought then, man, we've really got the war made now.
So on the 28th of June,
Yeah.
you are past Rome.
280 miles north of Rome.
You're relieved then.
Relieved then. The whole division was relieved.
Where'd they take you?
Well, on the way back, we didn't know where we were going. You hear all kind of rumors, and the rumors we'd heard for a year that as soon as we captured Rome, the war would be over for us if there's any of us living yet. But since we'd already gone beyond that, surely this could be going on our trip home. But on the way back, we were going all the way back to Salerno, where the division had gone in September before. But on the way, we did get 5 days in Rome.
Did you?
We got hot meals, we got clean clothing, got showers. They were just wonderful to us. We just celebrated like the Italians did. And we got to see the Colosseum. I've got a picture here. It was taken then by an Italian photographer. It was taken on the steps of the Colosseum.
Are you in it?
Well, it was just of me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And of course, I told him I was just there a short time, and I wouldn't be there to pick the picture up. Yeah, that's all right. You give me your address, we can send it home. And sure enough, about 3 years after the war was over, I got that picture.
Is that right?
Mail from Rome.
3 years later.
3 years later.
It came in the mail.
Yeah, right.
Amazing. That's
I couldn't believe it. And just a young whippersnapper then, but I still had in the battle dress uniform. Only it was clean ODs, shirt, pants. Still had leggings. That was back before we even got combat boots. And anyway, it was wonderful 5 days there. And after that 5 days, then we went all the way back to Salerno and started taking amphibious training.
Uh-oh, something's up then.
We knew we wasn't going to invade New York.
You weren't going to invade even New York, right?
And morale was really low. And of course, 90% of them then were replacements that would come in the last month or so.
You were one of the old guys, so to speak, weren't you?
They said when I joined them, if you make it 24 hours, you're an old veteran. That was true.
You're a combat veteran by that time, aren't you?
Right. And thousands of them didn't make it 24 hours. And
where was this river that you were talking about, Rapano?
Rapido River. That was around Casino.
Oh, that was Casino.
Yeah, they're still trying to take Casino then. And it was about like Brush Creek, and it had been raining for days, and it was running wild. And like I say, in all of Italy, the Germans always had the high ground. They was always looking down on them. And all they had to do is sit there with artillery observer and call this artillery in on you. And anyway, I was lucky I missed that one because we were on at Casino, and they pulled 2 regiments of the division I was in. I was in the 142nd, and this 141st and 143rd, which my friend here on Fairground Road was in the 143rd. One night, Mark Clark had the 141st to try it, and they lost about 4,500 men. The next night he had the other regiment to try it, and they lost about the same number of men. Didn't get over 200 on the other side of the river. And a lot of those men were drowned trying to get across that river. That river was running red. And the ones that got across there, when it got daylight, they looked around, and the Germans just sitting all around them, just sitting there laughing at them, looking right in their foxhole, all around them.
What happened to them? Captured?
Yeah, they captured them. They made fun of them. Anybody that would be that stupid, they'd throw your arms down and fall in, and capture them, every one of them. And of course, I got that book there. When they had Mark Clark up for the Senate investigation after the war was over.
For the Rapido?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're taking amphibious training, so morale goes down the tube.
Yeah, right. And
where did that lead to?
that left us. Of course, when you load on troop ships, we had troops. A lot of ships in loaded,
Mm-hmm.
for another invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And we went in southern France, around Toulon and Marseille.
Mm-hmm.
And
did you meet any resistance there?
there was quite a bit of resistance. They said we wouldn't, but we did. Several of the beaches was they were so mined and so many obstacles on the beaches and before, big boulders, and they had sunk a lot of the French Navy there. Mm-hmm. And we had to change beaches. And the best platoon leader, he was first lieutenant. He joined us while we were taking amphibious training there. The best platoon leader that I ever had. I had several of them. Was killed there the first 10 minutes on that beach. We hit this barbed wire as soon as we got off the landing craft. Those Higgins boats. That's what we were on. And we hit this barbed wire, and of course I'm up in the front of this boat. I'm the first one in. And usually those lieutenants, they're behind, the whole platoon's in front of them. But this one, he came to me while we were taking this amphibious training. Mm-hmm. And he said, "You're one of the oldest men left in the platoon." And he said, "Anything you could do to help me stay alive," he said, I'll listen and I'll appreciate it. He said, "I want to live." And he did. He was just common. I mean, man like that, you'd fall anywhere. Mm-hmm. It's the only one I ever had that way. Mm-hmm. But it was my job when we hit this barbed wire. Usually, in one of those amphibious landings, they have what they call Bangalore torpedoes. Mm-hmm. And you probably heard of those.
Long pipes,
yeah,
explosive
long
in it.
Mm-hmm. And maybe 3 or 4 sections of them. You screw them together and slide them under this barbed wire and set them off, and it just rolls it back. We didn't have any part of the beach we hit. So it was my job to go in front and fall across that barbed wire, and the men to walk across me.
On your back?
On my back. Mm-hmm. And I was well planned to do that, and that's exactly. And this lieutenant passed me by and run up there and threw his body on that barbed wire.
He did.
And he had a hand grenade, like all of us did, into his cartridge belt. And he pulled a pin as he hit that barbed wire.
Blew him
up.
That must have been an accident then.
Oh,
when the pin was
right.
maybe on the wire or something, a pin got caught.
Pulled the pin.
Oh, darn.
His weight, when he fell, pulled the pin out of that grenade.
Yeah.
And his name was Ketchum.
Mm-hmm.
And I have his address. I wrote to that address after the war was over. And people there with the same last name received the letter and sent it back. And said there was no person living there by that name. You know, what the deal was on that.
Well, then how did you get through that barbed wire?
Well, the men just kept on crossing over me, and others would throw themselves on.
So you threw yourself on it again,
yeah,
or two,
yeah.
and then they go over.
And wait till.
Was there any firing?
Maybe, continually machine gun, mortar, artillery, German. And of course, we have to get inland, 1,000 feet before you can see where they're firing from, because they've got these pill boxes and things. They've been preparing for that for years. And well entrenched and well hidden, you know, and a lot of them you have to get them out with flamethrowers. That's the only way you can get them out, or get to an opening in those pill boxes and throw a grenade in them. Satchel charge, TNT, something like that.
Did you have to fight from like pillbox to pillbox?
Oh yeah, until we got inland and 2 or 3 miles.
Okay. Well, after you get inland, then how did the French treat you?
Real, about like the Italians.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, they were jubilant.
Okay.
They had actually probably been occupied, I guess, longer than the Italians had. And yeah, they treated us.
They shared their food.
Saviors.
They shared their food and their wine and
what little they had.
Yeah.
But they had plenty of wine. But
Yeah.
they were all the kids, women, the old men. They were all out with wine.
Okay. Did you drink at that time?
At that time, I would take a drink and taste it. Not while I was on the line, but when I was back on the line, I tasted a whole lot of it.
Okay.
And but while you were,
when you
it's
came
funny.
off the line, did you relax?
No, you didn't relax. You couldn't relax because you knew what you were going back to. Maybe in a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, because you got all these new equipment, new men. Trained a few days with them, and right back you can go again. You had your personal stuff in a barracks bag that you left back with the cook when you left. And I never did collect souvenirs until the day we found out we were going to be relieved. You never did want to get caught with any German stuff on you.
Yeah.
Watch, ring, dagger, pistol, whatever. Same way, but none of them didn't want to get caught with GI stuff on it.
What would happen?
He didn't make it back to prisoner of war camp. And but all this stuff, your personal stuff, I would collect, and I had a nice collection. I'd give anything. I had a German dagger that I took off a German officer. That has a black onyx handle and had red rubies. A swastika made out of red rubies. I had that and P-38 and Luger and.
What happened to that stuff?
Well, that was left back with the cook. And then while you were on the lines, he would keep all this stuff. And if you get relieved, go back then 2 or 3 miles. Then your name was on this barracks bag. You got it back. But 80% of the men that left them there didn't come back to get them. So they took everything in everybody's and dumped it out. Everybody took whatever they wanted out of that. So
did you lose the bag that way, or?
I didn't get back with that thing. Only the New Testament I had in my pocket. Purple Heart. I came back in pajamas. I didn't get back with that thing.
Did you mail anything back?
No.
Couldn't have done that. Okay.
Never mailed a thing.
Well, now you're in southern France, though. Finally got there, and you're.
Yeah, and the going was easy, not easy.
Compared to casino and.
Compared to the winter before, it was easy. It was about like it was after we broke out of Anzio to Rome, and 200 miles north of Rome. It was just fast as you could go, as long as you could go, any way you could go, and to keep them on the run so they wouldn't have time to set up a fortified position. But you run into a lot of roadblocks, and maybe you can wipe out one roadblock and there was another behind it. Sometimes it'd take you a week to fight through the roadblocks, but you got to kill a lot of men that way, and a lot of them bunched up after you got them on the run. A lot of the rear echelon would catch up with the infantry, and a lot of them never seen or heard a shot fired before or got killed because we had them on the run now. But we went on tanks, half tracks, trucks, walked, ran, crawled, and I've dug up to 5 or 6 foxholes on the same day.
Yeah.
You dig one, and you think, well, this is where they're making the stand. Maybe you break through in a couple of hours or a day, and you go again. Stop you again, you dig another foxhole.
Well, now you, so that would be about June 28th when you invaded southern France,
No,
right?
it was 15th of August.
15th of August,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get into the winter here.
Yeah, it's, and I was always scared to death. I was never pretend to be any hero. I was a scared to death teenager, scared all the time. And when I had a chance to go to sleep, unless I just passed out, I didn't, because I didn't want to wake up my throat cut or something. And what time I slept with one ear open, they say. But sometimes you passed out from exhaustion. And I read in these books after the war was over, we lost as many men from exhaustion as we did from battle. I didn't realize it. But I know you went beyond your capacity to go. It's unreal what a human can go through with. And they still pushed you. And but like I say, I'm no hero. I was a scared to death teenager until the last 2 weeks before I got hit. I got so I wasn't scared anymore. I said, it's out there. I'm going to get it sooner or later.
Did you feel like you gave up, or you just?
My time had been up I had almost 300 days of that, and my time had been up 265 days at least. And I could just see them continually come and go. When I got hit, I didn't know a soul left in the platoon, in the squad I was even in. I've seen it turn over so many times, and never did even know the squad leader's name 3/4 of the time. I had so many different ones.
When were you?
Different scouts.
When were you wounded? When?
5th of October.
5th of October.
2 days after my 20th birthday. And but by the time September came, it kept getting rougher and rougher day by day.
You mean the closer you're getting to the Germany?
The closer you're getting into Germany, the tougher it got. And after we crossed the Moselle River, and that was about the middle, about the middle of September. Day by day, and in one of these books here, well, I've got it from the National Archives. Battle day to day for my division and my company. But anyway, it mentions my company there on the 21st of September. I know that's the worst fiasco we ever run into. We run into a lot of them, but this one was a company, and apparently we ran into a whole battalion of Germans because they were all around us, and this was 21st September, and we lost our whole weapons platoon. They captured our whole weapons platoon, killed and wounded. Anyway, we lost. That said, we lost a third of the company. But a third of the company then, the company on sub strength about 180 men. We were already down to about 100 or 120 men. And we lost a third of them. So they was only about 45 to 55 of us left after this. And after that, I decided, well, I can't go any longer. I can't face another winter. And I wasn't scared after that. After that day, I was.
Did you think you were going to die?
Oh yeah, I knew I was going to die or get wounded. It's just a matter of how bad you was going to get hit.
After that, were you able to lay down and get a good night's sleep?
No, you never did. You never did do that. Most of the time, you didn't even stop at night. If you had them on the run, you kept going. As long as they were going, you were after them. Mm-hmm. And very seldom that you would ever lay down and get over 2 hours sleep. Very, very seldom.
Were the Germans, some of them at any rate, surrendering in greater numbers?
A lot of them in these drives, when you had them on the run, they were troops that the Germans had made. You know, they'd capture them from these other countries, and they and just send them to slave labor camps or something like that. They would give them the option. They'd fight for them, or they would die. You know, they had their choice.
So they'd put them in uniform, and
they'd put them in uniform, and they'd keep a few of them, and they'd keep an officer over them where he'd keep an eye on them. And even though they didn't want to do it, they could kill you just as dead as a German SS trooper, as long as they were firing at you, and they would do that. I mean, and they did lose their officer, then maybe 4 or 5 of them would come out with their hands up.
Did any of them ever surrender to you?
Oh yeah. I've captured 7 at one time.
Of Germans or the other of Germans?
Yeah. Of course, they all had German uniform on. I don't know what company they are, what country they were. Okay. And some of them are just as diehard as the Germans were.
Did an SS ever surrender to you?
No. They were. I had one spit on me one time. He was wounded, and our own medics were taking care of him, and had him on the litter. And as I passed him, he spit on me.
Huh? What'd you do?
I kind of dropped my rifle butt down in his face.
It fell in his face.
It fell in his face.
Yeah. Okay.
And didn't kill him, but he had a pretty bloody nose, and
didn't spit again, maybe.
He didn't spit anymore unless he spit his own blood. But he was going, and I was going this direction. But
they were fanatics, weren't they?
They were fanatics. Yeah.
Did you run across any where the Germans had committed anything against the civilians
Oh yeah, you'd hear a lot of that. You didn't see it. A lot of the men did later on in the war when they started to capture and running into these
concentration
hawks. What do they call it? Those German or ovens and all.
Oh yeah. Concentration camps and places like that.
Concentration camps.
You didn't get that far.
I didn't make it that far. No, I didn't cross the Rhine. I made it until October, and if I hadn't got hit and still made it on, I would have been in the Battle of the Bulge.
You would have, yeah. That division, the 36th Division, was.
Yeah, got caught in the Ardennes there.
Were you was that division then under Patton?
No, Patton was the 3rd Army. I was in the 5th Army in Italy. I was under Mark Clark. And then the 7th Army was under Patch, P-A-T-C-H.
Yeah, Patch. Okay. Yeah. Now, what about the day you were hit? How'd that happen?
Well, it had been raining for at least a week. And then it's getting fall, you know. Nights are cold, cool, and the days are chilly. And we'd gone about a week, and it rained day and night. We got this little town called Tendon, T-E-N-D-O-N. That's as far as I made it. And like I say, that was first part of October, and it had been yard to yard about ever since the middle of September. And in the forest, seemed like we were always in the hills or the forest, because that's the only place you can get any cover, you know. But anyway, this day on the 5th of October, the sun had broke through at about noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, quit raining. And and the sun had broke through the clouds. And beautiful autumn day, and we was making this attack then. The intelligence told us again that we wouldn't meet any resistance. They said there's a little town across this hill mountain. If we captured that town before dark, we could sleep there that night. And we knew that wasn't true because we'd heard that before. We never stayed in the town. You went on, there were their echelon, stayed in the town.
Yeah.
Would you mind to turn that off a second while I go to the bathroom?
Oh, not at all.
We'll
take a rest anyway.
Yeah. You're
There we are. We're back on. Okay.
back.
Now you're talking about
Back in action.
the sun came through and it was a nice fall day.
Yeah, 5th of October, and I could say that going was getting tougher by the day, and I was leading this attack.
How many other were you? Like a platoon or a company or
a company? Company attack, and usually you stayed in the company, and sometimes a platoon would have an objective, or a squad would have an objective, but overall most of the time it was a company, and maybe in a whole battalion, I don't know. But anyway, I know I was in the front naturally, and I got out of that job 7, 8 times. Because every time we get replacements, I'd talk the squad leader into giving those guys a shot at it, and maybe I could move farther in the back of the squad and be a rear echelon. Because I felt like, getting back even 5 or 6 men in the squad made the awfulest difference in the world. But anyway, we started through these woods, and every once in a while the trees were all thick, but every once in a while you'd come into an opening place where the sun would be hitting the ground. And all of our clothing was still soaking, all of our equipment and everything. It had been raining so long. And anyway, I tried to always watch the ground and watch in front of me and watch over me, and just alert all the time. And I was then, but I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared this time. I knew they were out there. I just didn't know how close. And I knew as thick as it was in that woods that I could walk up on one any step. But anyway, I saw a little glistening on the ground, and I took another step, and I thought, well, we're miles from any towns or cities or houses as far as I know. What is shining? So I stopped in my tracks and looked, and it was a wire to a booby trap, a little copper wire. The sun was hit that wire, the end of it. They'd covered it all but 2 or 3 inches where it was tied to this tree. And it was exposed, and that's where the sun hit, and that's what caught my eye and caught me from tripping over it. And anyway, I got to this wire, and then I could see it run from this tree over to this tree. So I stepped across it, and I pointed to the men behind me where it was. And it seemed like each step I would take, here would be another one. They were just like spider webs. They just run crisscross from each tree and all around. And I went about 25, 30 yards through that, booby traps and mines, tiptoeing, watching for these tripwires. And finally got through all of them. And so far the men behind me had come through them and hadn't stepped on one. Tripped one, and all at once I got probably 50, 75, maybe even 100 yards beyond the last tripwire. And this kid, never did know his name. I'm sorry, I didn't learn his name and try to look him up, but he saved my hide at that time. He was around in back of me about 25, 30 yards and kind of up on the hill. And he could see down on the flat where I was. He could see right in front of me. And he said, hit the ground. He said, they're right in front of me. Well, I hit the ground, but it was so thick and that you couldn't see real good 10 yards in front of it. Much undergrowth and so on. So I thought, well, if he saw them, they didn't go very far, you know. And way back behind me, the old squad leader, he hollered, move on up and make contact. So I did. I didn't even hesitate. Ordinarily, I'd been scared to death and trying to outflank them or do something besides go to where they ran from. But I was already on the way when he hollered, really. And I got up a few more yards, and here laid 4 or 5 German overcoats on the ground and a deck of cards, and they'd been making coffee.
Mm-hmm.
They had all their equipment out there in this sunny spot in front of their guns drying out.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, they didn't go far and leave those overcoats and what equipment they left there. They didn't dream about anybody getting through to all these tripwires and getting up on them that close, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But what they'd done, they had their guns dug in and they'd come up this sunny spot in front of the gun. So when I walked up on them, they run back and got in the hole with these machine guns. And about the time I got to their clothing, they opened up. So I tried to pick out the biggest tree between me and them, and saw one little to the right and in front of me towards them, and I ran as close to the ground as I could to try to get to that tree so I'd have a little cover. And I did. I made it to that tree. And they could see me probably, but I could never see them. I kept trying to peep around the tree to see them. And I had a hand grenade. I took one off my cartridge belt. I was going to try to throw a hand grenade around that tree towards them, and figured it probably hit a tree or sapling or something, come back in my face. So I canned that idea, and anyway, I was in on my right knee and had to stock my rifle down on the ground and just peeping, trying to see around the tree till I could get a shot at them or something, you know. I never did see it.
Is there any shooting going on at that time?
Oh, they're just about to saw that tree down. I mean, hundreds of rounds. I bet they put 10-pound lead in that tree, and that thing, the bark was just flying, covering me up.
How about other soldiers? Are they?
Well, they're all behind me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and all these rounds are going off and going over me,
Mm-hmm.
and hitting the guys behind me, and some of them hitting the ground and hitting all those booby traps, setting those
Getting blown
behind
up.
me. Yeah. And yet I'm the only one they can see. And I thought for a long time it was the only one the gun was firing, the one right in between me and that tree, right straight in front of me. And after a while, I guess they figured out they was never going to get me behind that tree there unless one of them come out and come towards me with a rifle or a bayonet or something. But anyway, there was 2 guns, and another one over on the left end, he started firing at me. And that's when I got hit. I guess the one over here burnt me across here and hit this New Testament. I went back. I thought I was hitting the shoulder, and a round went through the stock of my rifle and went into my hand and exploded. Didn't even come out my. And I don't know how all this happens fast, and that rifle just exploded in my hand. And I thought I'd bought the farm then because I didn't see any way out. Two of them firing, one of them fire, and then the other one let off and the other one fire. And and I could hear all these guys behind me hollering and screaming. They were getting hit. See, they were on the same level as I was. But finally, I decided that there was no way I could get to them, and I decided that I always had a fear of getting gut shot. I never was so afraid of small arms fire. It was always that artillery and mortars. That's that all the infantrymen dreaded, it's that artillery. And the small arms fire, I knew it killed you, and I knew it did. Hundreds of them, but I never did get as afraid of small arms as I did the artillery. But I always had the fear of getting hit in the stomach, gut shot. But I decided then that I don't even have a rifle now. My hand and arms paralyzed. I couldn't even throw a grenade if I had some place to throw it. And so I decided I was going to try to get my feet up to that tree and my head back towards where I just come from. So that's what I did, and I was so close to that ground, all this small stuff over me, they was cutting that down. They had this grazing fire, one interlocking the other. They was cutting everything 2 foot off the ground down. It was falling on me and all around like a mowing scythe. So I thought, well, the only chance I'll get out of here, I'm just going to let them cut me in two in the back. So I got my toes up and buried in that tree, and I thought, this one over here, he would open up and he'd kind of let off, and then this one, they just alternate. So I tried to figure out the rhythm of that, and I thought, well, when this one on my right, he was on my left, but now I'm turned around, heading back the other way, and he's on my right. So I decided when he lets off, and this one in front starts, then's when I'm going to get to my feet and roll and tumble and crawl and scramble and whatever, so I can get back to where I got a little cover where they can't see me. And that's what I done. I don't know how long I was pinned there, but it felt like an hour. It probably wasn't over 5 or 6, 8 minutes. It seemed like an eternity, but I finally rolled and tumbled and crawled in and got back to where they couldn't see me. But I was still between me and my squad leader. And every few seconds I'd crawl a little more and get a little closer where I'd left him. And finally got back to about where the squad leader was, and I dove in a ditch there where years and years before they'd had a logging trail in there, I guess, and kind of a little path here and there, and a big ditch where the water had run off the mountain. And I got back in there. Felt like I was home free then.
Yeah.
And got back in there with that squad leader. And incidentally, he just come back to the division the day before. He got hit 10 months earlier at the casino.
Huh.
Been in the hospital for 10 months.
And they put him back on the line.
And when I left him, he was sitting there shivering and shaking and crying. He said, "Don't leave me. Please don't leave me." And I remember his name. His name was Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T. But
How'd they take those guns out?
I don't know.
You don't know.
may have been a week later, may have been a day, maybe an hour. So, anyway, I met one of the guys back in Casablanca on the way back home. And I asked him, he got hit after I did, and I asked him if they captured that town. He said it took us a week to capture that town. And
that's the one you were going to walk into and spend the night.
Just walk across the mountain.
Yeah.
And he said he got hit a week after I did, and he said it took him a week to capture that town. And I met another guy there at casino, or not casino, but Casablanca. They were going back by ship, and they were flying me back. They stopped there to refuel and stayed all night in the hospital there in Casablanca. And I met my squad leader, and he got hit sometime around that remarmont, sometime around the 20th.
Was he the one that was shaken?
No,
okay.
No. This one I had to leave him. I mean,
I wonder what happened to him.
I have no. I wrote to his address too. He was original Texan. Never did hear from him. And I try that every few years. I try to write them the old address. But this squad leader, he got hit in one of these tree bursts. Artillery. They was shelling this mountain at night. We were already dug in to defend that mountain that night. And they knew we were there, and they started shelling. And he was in a hole next to mine, and this tree burst come in and blew his leg off. And his leg comes over and falls on me in my hole.
His leg.
His whole leg. Still got the boot on.
Oh, my goodness.
And I met him there in Casablanca, and I said, I still got your leg. And of course, we were so happy to get out of it. I mean, you can give an arm and a leg to get out of it. That's how bad it was. And he said, he laughed and he said, well, give it to me. He said, that's my ticket home. Yeah, just laughed about it.
When you were wounded, were you able to walk back after you got into the ditch there?
Yeah, I was.
Now your hand is mangled.
Yeah,
is it?
and they finally got a medic up in. He come up in this ditch where we were. He was the squad leader, and he wanted to know where I was hit besides a hand and arm. And I said, I think maybe my shoulder. I said, I felt a tug there, you know, and incidentally, before I got there, the Germans had cut all this small brush down, and they was jagged sticks sticking up in the ground. And they cut that so they called the field of fire, a great blazing fire. The machine guns overlap each other on this level ground. And I thought, well, maybe I fell on one of those, but while I was still on the hunker down, I felt the tug there. I didn't feel like I was hit. I just felt the weight, like, you know. Anyway, this medic cut my field jacket off and was cutting my shirt off and didn't see any blood. And he said, you got a red place here on him, but the skin's not broken. And anyway, several years, well, probably at least 45, 48 years later, I met this medic. He went to Arizona. I was at a convention in Sweetwater, Texas. They have a company one there every year in May. And he's from Maryland, and he goes to Arizona for the winter. And he stops at these reunions every May on the way back. And I got to talking to him. I didn't know him from Adam. He didn't know me. And he said he was a medic attached to E Company. And he wanted to know how far I got. And I said, a little town called Tendon. And he said, I remember Tendon real well. So I patched up several guys there. And he wanted to know where I was hit. And I told him. And he said, I was the one that patched you up. And he said, you guys just got those new field jackets 2 or 3 days before and new combat boots. And I said, that's right. And he said, you know, my officer, my commander, eat me up for cutting that field jacket off of you.
Really?
That's a
brand new jacket.
Brand new jacket.
Had to cut it off of wood.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that New Testament there is what got hit that time?
Oh yeah,
me
yeah.
know.
The buckle. I think I don't know where a bullet hit that buckle and drove it in there, and that's what ricocheted and come down and hit my stock of my rifle.
That's the New Testament you carried through the war.
Yeah, yeah.
And right there's a spot on it where it's damaged.
Yeah, and it goes all. My name's James, and the indentation
goes to James.
Yeah, right there. That's the last place it's indented.
Oh, isn't that something? So you carried that in your.
Yeah, yeah, and I
you
had a
think that
fountain
maybe-
pen, but then
You had a
fountain pen that I
fountain pen.
carried right there with it.
Okay.
And I never did find a piece of it. That was back before ballpoint pens, you know. This was
Okay. So then you had your gear on, and there was a buckle.
yeah. Either the bullet hit that buckle and
drove it
in
into
there,
the
and
New
it
Testament.
ricocheted down and hit my rifle, or either it hit my rifle and ricocheted up there, or there was more than one. I know there was a whole machine gun burst went between my elbows here and burnt 2 or 3 streaks across my stomach.
That's pretty close.
That's close. That is close.
Here's
bleed.
Here's an article. Now, this came right out of the paper then, obviously. It says, local soldier is recuperating at Coral Gables. That's you.
Yeah, that's me.
It talks about you and Mr. and Mrs. Miller D. Estepp Williamson, you, their son, recuperating at the RAAF Regional Hospital No. 1 in Coral Gables, Florida. 16 months of service, 11 months Italy, France. Took part in Casino, Anzio, Rome, southern France. Was wounded by machine gun fire at Tendon, France. Credited with taking 5 enemy prisoners, and you got the Purple Heart and the Combat Infantry Badge.
Yeah.
5 prisoners.
That was before I got my Bronze Star. All these medals, I never did get them. The only thing I got while I was in the service before I was discharged was the Purple Heart and the ETO ribbon, and it's got 3 Bronze Stars on it. That's for major battles. And it's got an oak leaf cluster on it. That's for an amphibious landing. And but anyway, the only medals that I received was Purple Heart and that ETO ribbon and the Combat Infantry Badge until I was discharged. And I got all these, and then the last 10 years I had Strickland's office.
Is your hand recovered okay?
Yeah, it's pretty good. They operated. I was in the hospital 13 months. It hit right here.
There's a scar there. I see that.
Yeah, a scar through here, and a scar all the way back through here, and through here. And they operated on that, I don't know at the time, but it was months that I couldn't even move a finger. And they said I never would be able to use it. In fact, when they put me to sleep, when I finally got back to the field hospital, these 2 doctors that did the surgery, and they were arguing. One of them said we can save it, and the other one said no, it'll never be any good. It'll set up blood boiling. And one of them said we have to take it off, and the other said I believe we can save it. And I went to sleep like that, and it didn't matter to me one way or the other. You know, I knew if they took it, I was out of it. In fact, that sergeant, he said, we'll get you another rifle. Here I am, I can't even move a finger. He said, don't leave us. He says, you're the best scout that's ever been in the company. And he'd just come back the day before. I don't know who told him that, but anyway, he said, we'll get you another rifle. Don't leave us. And he was sitting there just, I'm sure he was in they used to call it shell shock. Yeah. I imagine that he probably had to be taken out to the next day or the same day.
You say you were flown back to the United States?
Yeah.
From Casablanca?
They flew me. I kept going back. They take you back to a company aid station. And when I started back, they said they told me approximately where it was. This place we had just come through when we started the attack. they said we set up an aid station back about where we jumped off. And of course we're still in these forests in here, and this medic, he said, before you get back there, he said, I don't have anybody to send back with you. He said, do you think you can find it yourself? I said, you point me in the right direction. And he said, I'm going to give you a shot of morphine. He said, the feeling starts coming back in that. He said, you're going to be going into fits, you know. And we had this first aid packet. We had 8 big sulfa tablets. You're supposed to take this as soon as you're hit, you know.
What would that do?
It's to keep from infection. Anyway, I took those things. You're supposed to drink a quart of water with them. I only had not even a half a cup. I drank that. But I got so sick by the time I got back to that aid station, I felt like I got on the Mediterranean getting seasick one time. And but anyway, they take you back to a company, and then if you're going to be out a while, they send you on farther a little back to the battalion, and they decide you're there a day or two, and they decide if they're going to patch you up, and you're going back in the next few days. Then they send you back to regimental. And anyway, every step back you go, so how much longer you're going to be out of. And they finally got me all the way back to division, way back and almost back to where we come in, but around Grenoble, I think it was. Anyway, they put me on a plane there, went all the way back to southern France, where we went in, stayed there a day or two, and then they flew me back to Naples, Italy. And I stayed there a couple of days. They come in one night and said, how much you weigh? Or how much baggage you got to declare? I said, what do you mean baggage? I said, we're flying you home tomorrow. I want to find out, get your weight and how much clothing. I said, what you see is what you get. That's all I had, what I had on me. And back then, I think I weighed about 140, 45 pounds. And anyway, I flew from there back to Casablanca, back to the Azore Islands, and from there to Coral Gables, in Florida.
Well, what was that like, finally hitting the United States?
Man, it's like you've been born again. Really, really.
Did your folks get notice that you were coming back, or?
No, I called from there. First time I ever used a phone call long distance.
Was that right, from Coral Gables?
Coral Gables, Florida.
Who'd you talk to, your mom?
And talked to my mom, and I told her I was back in the States.
That was pretty emotional.
Unbelievable.
That was pretty emotional, wasn't it?
Yeah, a lot of it was going over with those guys, taping that, and then writing some of these articles and watching that Private Ryan.
Did you see that?
I've got the video. I kept it 2 or 3 months before I had nerve enough to watch it, and then I'd have to turn it off every once in a while and go back to it again.
Pretty realistic?
Yeah, the first 15 minutes of that is as real as I've seen. I've seen the Band of Brothers and all of them, but that Private Ryan, especially there on the beach, was as real as it got. The only difference you could tell if you was there and was a veteran, in all these war movies, the average person wouldn't notice it. But all these war movies, all these hand grenades, all these explosions, mortars, artillery, the rifles, the machine gun, it's all ours. And 24 hours after you're in combat, you can tell the difference between our rifle, German rifle,
the sound,
our machine guns, their machine guns.
The sound of them, yeah.
Our artillery, our mortars, you know exactly as soon as you hear one who's it is.
Did you ever pick up a weapon on the battlefield and use it, of a German weapon?
No. That's the only thing that we had the Germans. And the
M1 was a better weapon, wasn't it?
M1's the best rifles ever made, I imagine. The only drawback to it, their ammunition would fire in our M1, but our M1 ammunition wouldn't fire in theirs.
Oh, I see.
But 9% of their infantry carried these, we call them burp guns. They were those things at close range, they'd cut you in two. It was comparable to our submachine guns, only they were 5 times faster. I mean, they just zip off about like tearing a sheet of paper, they were that fast.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever been back to Europe and Italy?
Never have. I've always thought I would want to go, but my wife never did think I should go, and she never would agree to go.
Did coming back after the war, did you have trouble sleeping?
Oh, I still do.
Do you?
There's never a 24-hour period that I don't dream or nightmares or see these guys, looks on their face, not just ours, but the enemy, the innocent children, innocent German or Italian and French. You can never get far enough away till you don't hear that screaming and hollering and seeing the looks on the faces of people dying, and you'd be talking to one second and the next second to a corpse. Just something you don't live long enough to ever forget.
How'd you manage? And you came back and recuperated and got a job in insurance.
Well, it took a long time and for me to settle down. I had an awful bad time the first year or so, and I give my wife credit for me being living today. Really, yeah. And I didn't know her before the war. I met her after the war was over. And I was bad, and I was in a hospital 13 months, and that was, and incidentally in Coral Gables, when I got back to the States, they said they was going to send all of us back to the closest Army hospital, or the closest government hospital to our home as they could get us. So they asked me where my first choice would be. I had no idea where the hospitals were, and anyway, they said we had one in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, and another one somewhere. Anyway, I said either one of those would be fine. And they came back in about an hour, and they said, "We're sorry, those are filled up. Where's your second choice?" I said, "Well, let's try Kentucky." They had one in Louisville or Lexington. Come back a while later, sorry, it's filled up. I said, "Where's your next choice?" I said, "Anywhere except Alabama." Where'd I end up in the hospital?
Alabama?
Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
You're kidding me.
But that's where the University of Alabama was, and we were always going to football, basketball games, and all the co-eds were there at the hospital, always singing and having parties. And
where'd you meet your wife?
I met her in Williamson. She before I went in, when I went into service, I started working at a wholesale grocery company, Tug River Grocery Company in Williamson. And back then, when you went into service, you was guaranteed to get your job back if you wanted it after the war was over. So I drank and cavorted around, and I knew I was in the gutter and had to turn my life around. And anyway, I decided to go back to work there at this wholesale grocery company. And went back to work there, and she was working there in the office when I went back.
The rest is history. While you were in the hospital in Coral Gables and also in Alabama, did your folks manage to come down and see you?
Well, I was home. I started to say that. They sent me home. I'd go down, they'd operate on the site.
Oh, I see.
And they'd say, well, you can go home for 30 days. A couple times, 60 days. One time, 90 days. And then I'd go back and maybe they'd operate again. And after they'd take the stitches out, you want to go home again? And so I was just back and forth.
Okay.
On a train, slow.
Did you know how to drive for them? Drive a car?
Oh yeah.
Did you learn how to drive a car in high school?
No, we didn't have such thing. I was driving though before I went in service.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Okay.
My dad taught me to drive.
Well, James, while you're in the service, did you ever see anybody famous? Danny Kaye?
Danny Kaye.
He was an entertainer, wasn't he?
Marlena Dietrich.
You saw her?
Oh yeah, she came there and put on a show.
Where, in Italy?
In Italy, yeah. And two or three of them, I can't remember their name right off, but anytime we were behind the line, they always had USO shows. And
Bob Hope?
Never did see Bob Hope. And but Audie Murphy, you remember Audie Murphy?
Yeah.
I saw him receive the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Did you?
In fact, there's a picture in that book there of my division, his division, back behind the lines when they were decorating all these men.
Okay. Are you in the book there anywhere?
Yeah, but there are backs to, there's thousands of men in the picture, and I know about where I'm at in the picture, but all their backs are turned. But that's when he received and there was 6 men in our division that received the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Now, and did you ever see any famous generals? Did you see Mark Clark?
Oh yeah, he was one that was pinning the medals on those guys in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Patch, did you see him?
Saw Patch.
You ever see Patton?
Never did see Patton.
Or Eisenhower?
No. He was in Italy at one time, but he didn't get close to where we were.
Yeah.
Ernie Powell. So Ernie Powell.
Did you see Ernie Powell?
Yeah, he come right up there with a foot soldier. I mean, he was to be admired. He'd get right up there in that mud and stay with you.
He was killed in the Pacific, wasn't he?
Yeah, they pulled him out of. He was there at casino all the time, and all that mud and cold. And after the war was winding down Europe, then he went to Pacific and got killed in a sniper.
Where's what'd you do with your uniform?
I've got the blouse upstairs. My daughter took it over. Yeah.
She took it over. What do you mean?
Well, it's hers. She's, I couldn't get in one arm of it now.
You couldn't get in, could you?
No. But I was still at home. My my wife and I are pack rats. We've got everything we've ever had, but my mother's just the opposite. Something gets 30 days old, it's out of there.
Get out of here.
That's where all my uniform and pictures and everything.
Okay. My grandmother was like that.
Left home, it just disappeared one piece at a time, and the only thing I've got now is the blouse.
Well, let me get, I know I have some more tape left on here, so I'm going to get your medals up there, okay? And, let's see, maybe...
Yeah, you move that lamp or turn it on.
I'm turning it on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe set it down here,
Well,
away from it. Or
okay. Let's get kind of close in there. There's your division right there in the middle. That's the division
Yeah.
Medal and a T. I guess that stands for Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Yeah.
Big T.
And
Yeah, it's in the Airhead. Originally, it was Texas and Oklahoma.
What was that? So it used to be Oklahoma too,
Yeah.
but okay. There's your Purple Heart and your Bronze Star up there in the left top.
Combat Infantry Badge.
Infantry badge. Okay, good.
And there's 3 or 4 French and
Yeah.
these are things I won in the basic training on the firing range. And,
Right.
That's 142nd. Their motto then was "I'll face you."
Okay.
And,
That's your regiment, isn't it?
Yeah. And this is a ETO ribbon with, can't see them, 3 battle stars and Oak
Okay,
Leaf
we got your
cluster.
stars there.
And,
Okay, very good.
and this is a picture here by that Skypack, the one that wrote this soldier.
Oh,
This, if you've been in the airport in Columbus, there's a statue of this
Of
in
what?
Columbus with this same soldier horse on him.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Well, you have a lot of mementos here. I was just get some here of these folks, and the gentleman in the back there. That's your father, you say?
Yeah, this is my father here, and that's a flag off
There's
his,
your father.
off his casket. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my wife's father, and
Oh, yeah,
her brother, and her grandson,
Yeah.
and the old fellow back here with the beards are great-great-grandfather.
Where do you see that?
Right here.
Oh, yeah. He's probably Civil War, wasn't
Yeah,
he? Was he Civil War?
yeah.
Was he?
And that's me back when I had hair.
Yes.
And that's me, and that was in a parade several years ago, the Purple Heart.
Very good. There, yeah.
People took that, and I didn't even know who it was. They left a print of it in the Portsmouth Times. And all these men back here are fellas over at the Legion there, and started putting flags on the graveyard there now, and we've got about 100 flags now on fly on Memorial Day.
You know Gene Davis?
Yeah.
He's a Purple Heart guy.
Yeah, I know Gene.
I've interviewed him. He was Korea.
Yeah. This is a poem here, my grandson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Poem that your grandson did?
Yeah, this grandson here. And anyway, they're supposed to sing this "Wind Beneath My Wings" at my funeral. That's always been one of my favorites.
All right.
And he wrote this poem and sent it to me just in the last few months.
Very good. Very nice. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say and talk about?
I'll probably think of.
You will probably think of something.
I'm sure. I've got 4 pages of notes there that I forgot on to tell the other fellows. And I don't know where you can even see that or not, or get it on there. But
well,
maybe
I held it up there, you know, when we were talking about it there a little bit,
right.
and
yeah, I've got. Anyway, I've got this I wrote years ago. It's just I never did just about combat soldier, but anyway, I've got several things in here. Oops, and then all over the house. But,
here's like a yearbook, isn't it? Of
that's
division.
That's got a roster in the back of it of every man that went through a division.
Every man rotated through the division there.
Yeah. This this is come from the National Archives. See, this was secret up until I don't remember what year it was, but anyway, this explains here about this Italian, about our division when we captured this mountain here, Mount Artissimo. Somewhere, I guess it's in that, maybe it's in...
That's the one that you went
Yeah.
through the nighttime?
Yeah, right. And one in France. Oh yeah, fighting, marching, riding, marching, fighting again. That was on the breakthrough. And here's one on October the 1st, 44. And
A few days before you were wounded.
Yeah, I got hit on the 5th. Where he's around, explained there about the action around. But one of these here is about in October. Oh, here's one I was talking about, Artissimo. This is on the night of the 31st. Oh, here's what it's talking about where we ran into this fiasco. Anyway, it said the 2nd Battalion, which company he was in, and then surging forward from the 2nd block, as a road block at daybreak on the 21st, and an attempt to filter past the 3rd block on the left on the 21st, and intent. Company E, and that was my company, came upon more areas than they could handle. And that's an understatement. There was one in the woods. And that's map coordinates, I guess. But anyway, in the confusion, withdrawal, which followed, about a third of the company was lost. So,
Really took a hit there, didn't
yeah.
it?
Anyway, before I was married, my wife had an aunt that lived in Maryland. And her and her mother asked me if I'd go with them to visit. That's a company roster. That's
Where you have X's, what does that mean?
that's ones that I remembered their names.
Okay.
Somewhere I wrote down here. I went through that thing the other day, and I come up on 18 men. It was the only ones that I could remember their names.
I see.
And I had it written down the last time I saw them, what happened to them. Anyway, this Wright was the only one that I remembered was still left. The rest of them were either killed or wounded or missed in action.
Well, there was something about you were saying about Maryland.
Oh yeah. I get off one thing on the other, but we were on our way to Maryland, and we stopped one morning up in West Virginia. We left before daylight, about 8 o'clock in the morning. We stopped to this little town in West Virginia, went in to get breakfast. That was back before McDonald's or any of these fast food, you know.
Yeah.
So we parked right in front of the restaurant, and we went out to get in the car and had my back turned to the restaurant, was opening the car door, unlocking it, and a voice behind me said, "You SOB, you supposed to be dead." I thought, man, what have I got into here? I've never here before in my life, and got me mistaken for somebody. Maybe I am going to be dead. And I slowly turned around, and this guy was grinning, and it was one of them that was captured in that weapons platoon then in September before. And the Germans told them, all of them, that they didn't capture was either dead or wounded. And
so he recognized you?
He recognized me. Yeah, Frazier was his name.
Oh, the darn.
And another experience I had, and this happened on the same day, this fiasco of the 21st of September, when we lost a third of the company, they said. A fellow, I remembered his name. I took basic training with him, and he was from Akron, Ohio. His name was William Waldo. We called him Waldo's Johnson. He lived in Akron. And years ago, we came through Akron and stopped in Haight, and I got the telephone directory, and I called. They should have called that Johnson instead of Akron, because
everybody there's
thousands of Johnsons, you know. And I called 6 or 8 of them, and nobody had ever heard of him. The name, you know, I thought maybe somebody would have a connection to him, but didn't have any luck. And years later, I still thought about it, and I wrote a letter to the Akron Beacon Journal. And about a week later, he called me.
So he saw the letter, or somebody that
he saw it. He read it in the paper.
Oh,
but the last time I saw him was in this battle, and he was hit in the upper thighs. He had a whole burp gun hit him in the upper thigh. And I drug him down a little ravine, and that's where I had to leave him. And I didn't know. I wondered all these years if he's still living, if he bled to death. They found him, what happened to him. And he made it. They found him.
Lose his legs?
He didn't lose his legs.
Oh boy!
Didn't even break a bone.
Oh boy!
And they got him. Said a big guy. He said must have weighed 300 pounds. Came through the next day, and they was trying to find all the wounded, you know. And might have been a grave registration. Anyway, big old guy. He said. Picked him up, put him on his shoulder, and took him all the way back to the aid station.
Good.
And
that's
so helped me. A year after that, he dies.
Oh,
so,
oh my.
So,
well, listen.
I'll tell you what. There's some real, and a lot of these are real pictures there in this. All in Italy. And right here's one picture they had when we were getting ready to infiltrate that line. Back then we still had these old leggings on.
And these aren't boots, are they?
No,
they're shoes.
Those are shoes.
And we had leggings.
Tops and leggings. And then this is here is a staging area. All these are vehicles ready to get on the convoy to go into.
Do you recognize a lot of these?
No.
Name, pictures, or?
I don't recognize any of the pictures. There's
or people in them,
one in here. I don't know just where it is right off. Here's these Higgins boats we were on. So there's room for one platoon of men there.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get close enough, that ramp goes down and you're out of there. These are barrage balloons. They set up over the harbor for airplanes. And here we are in France, and you can see some of these pictures are the. This is some.
Did you ever see anything like that where women
resistance? They where they collaborated with the enemy. Man, they shaved these women. Shaved their heads first thing, so everybody'd recognize them. And they'd kill them if our troops didn't protect them, you know. Same way with the men. Here we are now. I'm somewhere in this.
In that group?
Maybe a mile ahead or a mile behind.
Yeah. Okay.
But on one of the tanks in here, I thought maybe it might have been me, but I have no idea. There wasn't very many of them pictures taken up that far, you know, unless you were on the run like that. Here's one of those collaborators they got here. He's got a bloody nose, and I imagine he's on the way out. Anyways, the GIs are trying to protect him from the French people. Here's a little girl out handing out a bottle of wine there in France.
Yeah, to a GI.
Yeah. And here's where we crossed that Moselle River sometime in September. I had an experience here. Talking about that wine.
Mm-hmm.
After on this mountain when they said the Rangers had relieved us and we were to regroup and to go to another objective. And as soon as we started off that mountain, we got into another ambush. Anyway, they told us to dig in. And I started digging in and had this entrenching tool I was digging with. And that thing, I hit something on the, and that thing just bounced right back up, about a foot on the ground. So, look, there's no trees. It wouldn't be a root to a tree that close to where I was digging. So I hit it again, and the same thing, sponge, and I just took my hand and just moved the dirt. And it was a barrel, one of these great big 250-gallon barrels that had been there hundreds of years, I'd say.
Really?
Back in Nero's time. Anyway, I broke this stave through that barrel, and this red wine was just glistening.
No kidding.
Sweetest, coldest wine I ever tasted. And the medic brought up one of these, what do you call them anyway, use them for blood transfusions.
Okay, a bottle or something.
To siphon it out. And a lot of guys were filling their canteens up for that. But as long as he was in combat, I didn't drink.
Okay.
I took a drink, I tasted it.
Yeah,
and,
and it was old.
And it was old. It was good. I'd say.
Was it wood? Was it a wooden barrel?
Yeah. The whole barrel was under the ground. And then there was no houses. And I'd say probably 2 mile radius of that.
So how'd it get there? Somebody had to bury it.
I'd say that was back. They say Napoleon attacked Rome. I don't know much about history from the south, and I'd say that had been there.
There may have been a house, or may have been a little village in that area at one time.
At one time it could have been, but it sure had been hundreds of years.
Well, I better get going here. I appreciate your talking to me. Thanks for everything you did.
Well, it's people like you that made it worthwhile.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way.
I've got thousands of things, and I'll think of things that I wanted to. That's the reason I've got. I don't know how many pages written down. Anyway, the guy, I called him this week, and he's supposed to be back over here adding that on to.
Which one is that? The Legion?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's already 2 tapes.
Is it 2 tapes?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about a 2-hour tape here. I'm sure there's not much left on this tape. So, okay.
But I've got, anytime you want to, you're studying some history about World War II, I've got a lot of it here. You'd be welcome to. I've got 2 volumes here on the 7th Army, and it goes.
That's the army you were in down. That's Patch's army.
No, that's Patch is in France. Yeah. And this, I've got another book here called "The Fighting's 36."
That's another. That's kind of like another yearbook-like thing.
Yeah. And this doesn't have the roster in it.
Have you read Stu and Ambrose's books?
Oh yeah.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. He's really good. This little book here is what I was talking about. This Swift and Deadly.
Well, that's about the division.
Yeah, and that's about the Rapido, and it's in the back of it's got a casualty report, and that's where I found this castle's name and address.
This fellow down here?
Yeah, lives on Fairground Road.
Is this the book you
showed up to? Yeah, I took it down and showed him that.
And he didn't want to admit it, did he?
No, he didn't. Well, he thought I was trying to sell him a book. He didn't want to be sold.
Yeah, I wonder if he would talk to me.
I'm sure he would.
Now, what was his name?
Especially if I ask him to.
Well, you go ask him first. You tell him what we've done,
I will.
and then I'll See what I can do.
Luther Castle is his name.
And he lives on Fairground Road?
Yeah, he lives, well, second house on the Fairground Road going north.
Turn there at the engineer's office.
Yeah, I'll go down Fairground Road.
Toward the fairgrounds, and then he's second house on the left or right?
Right.
Okay.
Brick house, second on the road.
Okay. You got a dog ear here. You know these people? Bill McFadden, Kenny Stahl, Ken Stahl.
No, I don't remember the names. It's probably
Lieutenant Potts.
probably my regiment or battalion or company or something.
Major Robert Mahaffey. Colonel Price.
You talk about history, right here is
Kenny.
history. And these 52 books here.
Yeah.
All these are, well, they went for years. I forget when they started, but finally in 1990s when I sat down and trying to get everybody to send in at least one story.
Send in an article. Yeah. Do they print those anymore? Do they
No,
publish it? This is the last of the series.
They printed them quarterly for 13 years.
I see.
We still get them, but it's more not that elaborate now. And there's not many men left, and we get it. They call it a quarterly. It comes out every 3 months.
Do you go to reunions? 36th Infantry?
I'm planning on going to one in San Antonio in August.
Oh.
Last of August. If I can make it. I'm being treated now for bladder cancer.
Oh, really?
And just day to day, you know, I'm going to be able to or what. I hope to.
Now you
love San Antonio.
Yeah, I was stationed in San Antonio.
You was in the Air Corps.
No, I was in the Army.
Oh, were you?
I was in the Army. Now my dad was in the Army Air Corps during World War II, and he was killed in Germany.
Is that right?
Yeah, so he went down in a bomber.
Yeah.
And but that's where I was stationed for a little while.
You remember, what's his name? The guy's name's got the book out now. Russet, I think. It's on 62nd.
Yeah, Russer. Tim Russer.
Yeah. Anyway, he's got a book out now. He's been on all these talk programs for the last month or so. And I guess the whole book's about his dad.
Yeah.
I think they call him Big Red. Or
Big Al or
Big Al or something.
Like that.
Anyway, you hear him talking about his dad going down one of those bombers. And,
Yeah.
he lived. And,
yeah. But well, I better get out of here. My wife's it's 15:08. Can you believe that? I got here at 5 o'clock.
The way I go, I tell you, I could do. And the reason I didn't talk about any of this until the last 4 or 5 years. It's a relief to talk about it now.
Yeah.
And I know every day I'm getting close to the end of the line, and I want to get it recorded. I want young people to know something about what was paid for their freedom.
That's right. Are you sleeping better?
Take it by spells. I never sleep over an hour at a time. Never. I haven't slept over an hour at a time. And
you're 80. You're 79, aren't you?
If I live to October, I'll be 80.
Yeah.
But out of those days and nights, and there hadn't been many hours they hadn't all come back.
There's a loud noise on the street, like something like.
And it seemed like I used to love to hunt, but I guess when I get in the trees and And in the wintertime, when I know it's raining and snowing and sleeting outside, even though it can be 80 and I'm warm as toast, I can still shiver thinking about Italy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You think you'll never thaw out, you know.
Yeah.
And then in the summertime, then goes from one extreme to the other, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Carrying all that load and trying to go, and a lot of days made 30 mile or more with all that equipment and
Mm-hmm.
ammunition,
Mm-hmm.
and it being the 90s. Well, how you ever made it, you know.
Like you say, a person can push themselves beyond the limits that they
Yeah,
think they have.
right.
Right?
Yeah, you sure can.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to be like a zombie, you know. Yeah.
Do you kind of forget what the other life was like as a civilian?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like you've always lived that way as a...
Like an animal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you get to be like an animal. I mean, you know, an animal, a wounded animal, you put them in a corner and they fight
Mm-hmm.
to stay alive. And it's unbelievable what kind of fight you can put up to try to stay alive, even though that's no life, you know, you still want to live. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
From day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute.
Mm-hmm.
It's not imaginable. It's really don't know how we ever made it. But the another thing about that, the average person don't realize is even in the infantry division, there's around 15, 16,000 men. And out of that infantry division, there's only about 40% that actually fired a shot or heard a shot fired.
Mm-hmm. The rest are support.
Right. Quartermaster, the ordnance, takes that many to keep you on the line.
Mm-hmm.
But I often wondered how you could be so lucky, you know, and get to be back there or get to be the #1 scout, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I always thought if there's another war, they ought to at least alternate, if you lived, every 30 days, change places.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty
Yeah.
hard to do after taking all that training to do what they did.
Yeah.
But, and 16 million men in uniform during World War II, and I forget the percentage now, but I think it's only like 20% that actually saw
Right.
combat.
Did you get used to seeing the wounded and the dead? Did you get used to when you were out there?
Yeah, you didn't think as much about it. You didn't have time, but every time you'd see one like I was talking about Waldo, or the one that lost his leg, you lucky dog, you're out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to live, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way you got it. I've seen dozens of them maim themselves getting out of it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Shoot themselves?
Oh, yeah. We had one guy that was a BAR man. He shot himself in the foot 3 different times. He didn't come back the last time.
He didn't?
May be still in Leavenworth.
Yeah.
First time or two, they thought it might have been an accident, but the third time,
It's pretty obvious.
pretty obvious, yeah. He'd get off one round in his foot with a BAR, and he's pretty good at it, or he couldn't have done it.
Were there any suicides?
Oh, yeah.
Were there?
Yeah. And a lot of them would crack, especially on these artillery barrages or mortar barrages, you know. You think there's just no end to it, and they're just falling all around you, and guys get up and just start running and screaming. And I had one guy, his name was Black. I think he was from Iowa, Wisconsin somewhere. Anyway, he was hit by a piece of shrapnel in his stomach. It must have been as big as your hand. I mean, how he did, I don't know. But that's like that instinct to live. He ran and screamed and was guts hanging out and him walking on them, and ran 30, 40 yards, fell over dead. It's big enough, almost cut him in two. That shrapnel, when it hits, it's red hot. It just burned right through your flesh.
You were lucky you went so long without before you got wounded.
Well, I don't know where I was lucky or unlucky.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I had a first cousin that he got put in the infantry same as I did. He went in about a year after I did. He got hit the first hour he was in the battle. And,
first hour.
And it wasn't enough to... In fact, he was looking through binoculars trying to pick out a machine gun nest, and the sniper shot the reflection of those binoculars, and the bullet went right through his hand.
Oh.
So he was out of it.
And that was the end of the war for him?
The end of the war, yeah. And one of his friends I went in with, they sent him up in Anzio, and he was wounded in the leg. A piece of shrapnel was laying on the ground, and the Germans overrun the position, and they weren't taking any chances. He went by, he stuck him in the shoulder. He was laying on his stomach. Stuck a bayonet in him, punctured his lung. First letter I got from home, he was already back home.
That was one of the guys you went in with?
Yeah. Took basic training and everything. All I say, when we got there to call it Mussolini's Dairy Farm, it was a repo depot, they called them, a place where they assigned you to different divisions, companies, and so on. And they assigned him to the 3rd. And that's the one Audie Murphy was in, at Anzio. That's where he got wounded. I can remember all this stuff now, better now. The older I get, the more plainer it is. I've always heard, I don't know how true it is, that I begin to think it's true, that everyone, when they reach a certain age, their life reverts and they start going back.
Have you started going back?
I think I'm almost back.
Almost back?
Back to the fetal position.
I better get home. My wife's doing it.
I appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time.
I
appreciate your time a lot. Now you'll be on the public. You'll be on the shelf there at the public library.
Well, you say you're going to get me a copy of this.
Oh yeah, I'll get you a copy too.
Okay.
And don't. Let me give you my name.